南无萨怛托苏且多也阿赖诃帝三藐三菩提谢。
南无萨怛多苏且多也阿拉诃帝三藐三菩提谢。
南无萨怛托苏且多也阿赖诃帝三藐三菩提谢。
南无萨怛多苏且多也阿拉诃帝三藐三菩提谢。
南无萨怛托苏且多也阿赖诃帝三藐三菩提谢。
南无萨怛多苏且多也阿拉诃帝三藐三菩提谢。
南无大方广佛华严经华严海会佛菩萨。
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 Homage to the Buddha's Flower Garland Sutra of Great Expanded Teachings. And the ocean-wide flower garland assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。
The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in 100,000 million eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning.
上人、各位法师、各位佛友，大家阿弥陀佛。今天是2015年2月7日，星期六的晚上。这里是加州伯克莱圣寺。我们今天晚上所要研究的是华严经的第26品、十地品、第6地的这种现前地。
Venerable Master, Dharma Masters, all friends in the Dharma, Amitabha. Tonight we are here in Berkeley Buddhist Monastery on a Saturday evening on February 7th, 2015, investigating the Avatamsaka Sutra. We're in the chapter called the 10 Grounds chapter, and we're particularly studying the section which is the 6th ground, the ground of manifestation.
今天晚上我们要研究的经文，在中文本是24页，英文本在第25页。那么，所以我们先把这个经文呢读过一次以后，我们再来消文。
So we're on page 24 and 25 in the Sutra book. So we'll read the text first in Chinese and then in English to begin the lecture.
佛子，
佛子，
菩萨住此现前地，
菩萨至此现前地，
得入空三昧，
得入空三昧，
自性空三昧，
自心空三昧，
第一义空三昧，
第一义空三昧，
第一空三昧，
第一义空三昧，
大空三昧，
大空三昧，
合空三昧，
合空三昧，
起空三昧，
起空三昧，
如实不分别空三昧，
如实不分别空三昧，
不舍离空三昧，
不舍离空三昧，
离不离空三昧，
离不离空三昧，
此菩萨得如是时空三昧门为首，
使菩萨得如是四空三昧门为首，
百千空三昧皆悉现前，
百千空三昧皆现前，
如是实无相，
如是实无相，
实无愿三昧门为首，
实无愿三昧门为首，
百千无相，
百千无相，
无愿三昧门皆悉现前。
五愿三昧门皆悉现前。Do the English, the second paragraph. Disciples of the Buddha, when the Bodhisattva, we can read together. Disciples of the Buddha, when the Bodhisattva dwells on this, the ground of manifestation, he attains the Samadhi of emptiness of entry, the Samadhi of emptiness of O nature, the Samadhi of emptiness in the primary sense, samadhi of foremost emptiness, the samadhi of great emptiness, the samadhi of emptiness of combining, the samadhi of emptiness of arising, the samadhi of undiscriminated emptiness as it truly is, the samadhi of non-forsaking emptiness, and the samadhi of emptiness of non-separating separation. This bodhisattva attains those 10 kinds of samadhi doors of emptiness as primary, and then millions of samadhis of emptiness all manifest before him. In the same way, with 10 samadhi doors of marklessness and 10 samadhi doors of wishlessness as foremost, 10 million samadhi doors of marklessness and wishlessness all manifest before him.
这一段经文呢，是第六地菩萨现前地他的一种修行的境界。这个修行境界呢，都是跟三昧还有这个空有关。这个在佛教呢，讲这个空或是有，但是呢，空是一边，有是另外一边，所以呢，空有是两边。但是呢，真正的这个佛教的道理叫做空有不二啊，就是空跟有呢不在两边，是中道的，就是你不能执着空，也不能执着有。但是呢，在修行过程中，像小乘人呢，他们会先证得人空，就是把这个人的执着呢，要先放下，看破了，然后呢，能够知道我这个人呢是空的，证入了空性。那么，可是大乘的菩萨呢，他需要证得法空，他知道这个法呢，这也是空的，它也是空性，所以也没有执着。人空法空以后呢，他才能够慢慢的到这种人法双亡，就是呢中道了义的。不过呢，这个在修行过程中也一定有一个次第的。这里讲到很多的空，而且这个境界呢，事实上已经不是我们凡夫能够明白了。因为一般我们讲说空就是没有了，事实上空不是完全没有。真正的空是放下执着这个空里头呢，它是有妙有的，所以讲真空妙有。
So here the Bodhisattva is cultivating various samadhi doors. And we see these two words coming up a lot in this section, that of samadhi and that of emptiness. So in Buddhism, we talk about emptiness. And emptiness is often, you could say, given with the opposite, which is existence. And existence and emptiness seem to be this kind of duality, emptiness and existence. However, in the Buddha Dharma, true emptiness and existence are not dual. They're not different. They're not non-dual. This is because we cannot attach to either one. We don't attach to emptiness, and we don't attach to existence. This is the Buddha's middle way. So, in the small vehicle cultivation, those cultivating the small vehicle, they are able to empty out, you could say, people, or living beings, or the self. And the great vehicle dharmas, however, have to build on that, and you also empty out all dharmas. There's no attachments whatsoever. So when the self and dharmas are all empty, then one progresses step by step in one's cultivation. So here this bodhisattva has realized all these various samadhis of emptiness, and this is not something very easy. It's nothing that we as ordinary people really understand. This isn't our state. This is the bodhisattva's cultivation of being able to empty out everything. Emptiness isn't to say that nothing exists, but rather that we don't attach to anything. In that emptiness, there is wonderful existence. In wonderful existence, there is true emptiness.
我们从这段经文呢，一句一句的来看，佛子现在呢，这个金刚藏菩萨呢，又称了一声佛子，因为在实地品呢是金刚藏菩萨代佛呢来宣说这段这个实地品的，他就对与会的大众这些大菩萨呢就称佛子。这个佛子呢，就是如果我们发菩提心、行菩萨道，或是那些法身大士，就有资格被称为佛子。或是呢，一般人如果你受了菩萨戒，那也发心了要行菩萨道，这个时候呢，也开始呢可以被称为佛子。 菩萨住此现前地。现在呢，这些菩萨呢住在第六地现前地。这个现前是什么现前呢？就是这个菩萨他的智慧现前了，他的慈悲也现前了，他的神通也现前了，他的这个辩才也现前了。就是菩萨呢这时候有种种的这种智慧、神通、辩才或是他呢这个更多的这种修行呢，那种智慧呢，都开始现前了。这个时候呢，他会证入许多的这个三昧。这个三昧呢，在佛教是一个名相，它叫做正定正受。定就是一种定力，就像我们修行的时候呢，要修戒定慧。这个戒定慧呢是三无漏学。这个定力怎么来的呢？定力呢，不是说你光在那边打坐或是那个可以坐很久就有定力。这个定力呢是从持戒来的，你要先持戒了，你呢在修这个定比如说你参禅了，这个时候呢才会有定力。那你有定力以后呢，就会有这个智慧。所以戒定慧呢叫三无漏学，就是呢，如果你修这个三无漏学呢，那你呢就无漏了。无漏就是你不会再漏，不会到这个三界来轮回了。那么这个定力呢，它的首要就是要持戒。为什么要持戒？因为持戒了以后，你的心才会清净。比如说你打坐的时候，为什么你很多妄想？这个妄想从哪里来？就是因为你的心不清净。心不清净，你打坐怎么做呢？坐在那边如果不是坐不住，就是呢那个心里很多妄想，很多妄想的时候，心里就没有定力。表面上呢，看你的身呢坐在那边不动，但是呢，你的心里呢妄想纷飞，那个心动了，所以呢，那个就没有定力。所以定力呢，一定要先从持戒开始。那你再修种种这种定的法门，才可以呢真正有这个定力。定力有了以后呢，它就会自然有智慧。所以就讲到说呢，因戒生定。如果你因为持戒呢，你就可以生出定力，因定发慧。你有定力以后呢，你这个智慧呢就发出来了。这个智慧不是从外面去找，因为我们自性里头呢，本来这个智慧就具足了，跟佛呢是无二无别的。所以当我们定力有的时候，这个自性中本有的智慧就会现前。那因此这个三昧呢，就称为正定。为什么要称为正定呢？因为要有别于外道的邪定。有些外道也有定力，但是呢，因为他的心没有正念，因此即使他有定力，也是一种邪定。
So let's go over the sutra line by line. So beginning, the Buddha or Vajracharya Treasury Bodhisattva calls out disciples of the Buddha. So who are the disciples of the Buddha? These are the great bodhisattvas. They're those who made the Bodhi resolve to cultivate the Bodhisattva path. For those who've taken the Bodhisattva precepts, one's, you could say, also becomes the Buddha's disciple in this case, disciples of the Buddha. And he says here, when the Bodhisattva dwells on this ground of manifestation, the sixth ground, he could say this ground of manifestation is called manifestation because at this point, the Bodhisattva on the sixth ground, his wisdom or her wisdom, his or her compassion, spiritual powers, as well as eloquence, ability to speak skillfully, all quote unquote manifest. They all come as a skill, an ability, or something that arises in his nature. All these different kinds of wisdom become uncovered in him, come out. They manifest. And this comes from his cultivation. And from here, he is able to realize many different samadhis. Now, samadhi is a term used in Buddhism that is very specific. And it literally translates as zhen, ding, zhen, so, which means a proper or appropriate or the right concentration and the right reception. And what does that mean? This samadhi, this concentration, comes from the three non-outflow practices that are precepts, samadhi, and wisdom. So the foundation is precepts. It's not that concentration comes from just meditating for a long time and just sitting there with your legs crossed and being able to meditate for many hours. That's not cultivating proper or right concentration. In fact, right concentration comes from holding the precepts well. From holding the precepts well, one naturally will develop proper or right concentration or strength behind one's concentration, and samadhi, which naturally gives rise to wisdom. So then from these three non-outflow practices, one is able to break the cycle of birth and death, of death and rebirth. And so when we hold the precepts, it allows us to purify our minds and purify our actions. And then when we go and meditate, all those false thoughts and those anxieties are not present. Instead, if we try to meditate and we haven't first purified our mind, so it's filled with all these false thoughts, then although our body can be still, just sitting there, our mind is fluttering about, thinking this, thinking that, and it's not still. And so we haven't purified our mind. Therefore, to really cultivate properly, we start with the precepts. So we restrain ourselves in our body, mouth, and mind. And then from there, we can develop a right concentration or right samadhi, which gives rise to wisdom. This wisdom is also not from the outside. It's something we can realize from our inherent nature. This wisdom is already inherent in our nature, and it just manifests. So here in this bodhisattva, on this ground, his wisdom or her wisdom manifests. And this, you could say, right concentration isn't something that he seeks from the outside. It's not something it's gotten from looking outside. There's a word we sometimes use called the externalists, but basically these concentration is some other, you could say, other spiritual practices or spiritual traditions have a samadhi that's you seek from the outside. It comes from the outside. But this one in the Dharma is not. The proper concentration is something just manifests naturally.
现在这个现前地的菩萨呢，他得入空三昧，就是他现在呢能够入到这个空的三昧了。这个空呢，我们的看法就是什么没有了，空了。就像你看到这个虚空，这个虚空呢，如果有一个建筑物，有一个房子，你就知道这里呢不空了。那么如果在虚空中，你抬头往上看，那就是一种空。那事实上，这个空呢，在佛教也不是只光讲这样子，它这个空其实就是没有执着，就是对任何呢人或是呢事物，它呢都没有一点执着，这个才叫做空。那像我们现在凡夫呢，我们看着这个虚空，我们会以为它就是空了。事实上，我们眼睛看的这个虚空，也不是真正的空。这个在《楞严经》呢就讲得很清楚。楞严经讲说，这个空呢，空生大觉中，如海一沃花。就现在我们眼睛肉眼看的这个虚空呢，是什么？是从我们的大觉海生出来的。我们的大觉海有多大？他说呢，如海一沃花。我们看到这个世界的虚空，就是我们这个大觉海。我们大觉海就是我们的这个自性，就是我们的真心，也就是我们的佛性。我们这个佛性就是一个大觉海。这个大觉海呢，那个大到怎么样？我们现在看的虚空，只是这个大觉海里头的一个小泡沫。那你想想看，这个我们的大觉海就有多大？所以那才是真的空。我们现在的空呢，还不是真的空。所以你看那个上人呢，做了一首宇宙白呢，上人就讲了那个时候那个双拳打破虚空盖。上人说他的两个拳头呢，可以把这个虚空的盖子打破了。为什么这个虚空还有一个盖子呢？还可以用双拳打破呢？这当然不是玩文字游戏，因为上人做这个宇宙白，其实就是上人修行的一个境界，也就是像《楞严经》讲的“空生大觉中，如海一沃花”。我们凡夫看的这个虚空是不真实的，它还只是我们大觉海中的一个幻化的，所以就像个泡沫。这个泡沫呢，你看它生出来了，那个泡沫呢，如果它幻灭了就没了。那么上人讲的这个意思呢，其实就是把它那个虚幻的我们这种世界的那种 虚空呢打破了，那就证入了我们本来那种自性的空性，就是我们的大觉海了，那才是真的空。所以这个我们一般讲的这个空呢，还不到那种究竟的空。那么一般或是呢，我们在日常生活中，这个你要做个佛教徒，最基本的就是要熄灭贪嗔痴，把这个贪嗔痴三毒呢熄灭了。这个是很粗的，就是修行呢，一入门呢就是不贪不嗔不痴。那这个对治的法门就是我刚刚讲的，你要勤修戒定慧。从这个戒定慧呢，你自然呢，慢慢的就不贪不嗔不痴。不贪不嗔不痴呢，是不是你什么都没有了？是没有错，就是不好的那些习气比如说我们有贪嗔痴，这个时候呢，这个习气开始没有了，开始空了。但是呢，好的善的，像戒定慧，我们呢就慢慢会更多了。那你说贪嗔痴没有了，是空的，可是我现在呢有一个执着了，就是我要修行我要修戒定慧，那是不是变成一个有了？没有错，这是在法上呢，它开始有了，就是我要有一个法门来修行，我才能够熄灭贪嗔痴。问题是大乘的佛法在你修行过程中，到以后呢，连这个法都要空的，就是你呢连这种对戒定慧说我要修戒定慧的这个执着都要放下，那时候呢就真的人空法空了。
So here we talk about emptiness, and the emptiness is usually when we think of emptiness, it's just kind of like empty space. So for example, we look in this room and look up and there's a kind of empty space. Or sometimes when we look at a place and if there's actually an object there, like say a house or a building or something, we don't think it's empty. But when we look up straight up into the sky is empty. So this is, you could say, one way of thinking about emptiness. But when Buddhism, we particularly talk about emptiness being no attachments, not having any clinging in the mind. We don't cling to people or living beings. We don't cling to any situation or external conditions. We don't cling to any objects, this kind of material objects. In fact, we can look up into, so if we look up into space and we think it's empty, in fact, it's not actually truly empty. In the Shurangama Sutra, there's a line which talks about comparing the empty space that we see with that of great enlightenment. And how it describes is the emptiness that we see with our eyes, all that emptiness just seems very vast. In fact, in the ocean or the sea of great enlightenment is just seen to be one little bubble on a wave, a little bubble on a wave. That's all of the emptiness. So it's very small in comparison to the great enlightenment, which is actually, you could say, another way of saying our true mind or our awakened nature. So this is how you could say how small empty space is. And if we really want to be able to get to true emptiness, then we had to let go of that kind of attachment to empty space, and then we can break through to true emptiness. So this is also described in the Venerable Master's poem he wrote called The White Universe. In the first line it says that he uses two fists to break through the cover of emptiness. So what does that mean? How is that possible? Why would you need to break through the cover of emptiness? For the Venerable Master, for sure he's describing a state of cultivation. It's not just empty words. He's cultivated to a point where you're able to let go of emptiness itself. You're not holding on to emptiness. It's just a bubble, and you break through that and it disappears. It's no more. That emptiness also needs to be emptied. And so by doing that, by breaking through that emptiness, one returns back to one's true nature, which is then true emptiness. So for all of us as Buddhist practitioners, how do we apply this in our everyday life? Most of the time we learn about the three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. And we try to reduce those. That's the first step, is basically reducing our three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. And we do that by cultivating precepts, samadhi, and wisdom, shila, samadhi, prajna. And then step by step, we cultivate. And bit by bit, we can begin getting rid of our bad habits. And you could say, as we cultivate, we start reducing the three poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. And bit by bit, we increase in our ability to hold the precepts, cultivate samadhi, and develop our prajna wisdom. And so you could say, first we empty out the three poisons, and we are attached to the three non-alpha flow practices of precept, samadhi, and wisdom. So yes, in the very beginning, as we attach to these practices, they're not empty. They're not empty. But however, over the course of cultivation, especially when you move into the great vehicle teachings, then at one point we have to empty out those practices as well. So then we're able to empty out ourselves and also empty out dharmas.
现在我们看都是第六地菩萨一个很高深的境界了。那说，如果我们研究《华严经》这个实地品，那在我们这个凡夫地，我们要怎么修行，或是我们要怎么根据这个经文来在日常生活中可以获得这个修行的这种益处呢？那么事实上，这个境界虽然很高，但是呢，我们也可以脚踏实地一点。像第一个叫入空三昧，这个空呢，我们就是以目前来讲，就是不执着，能够放下。那么，比如说像我们要帮助别人的时候，你是一个菩萨，你要行这个布施波罗蜜，这是六度万恨里头的第一度布施。那布施呢，就告诉我们布施的时候呢，要三轮体空。三轮体空就是没有一个执着说我在布施，然后我布施给谁，或是我布施了什么东西给谁。这个叫做三轮体空，没有一个布施的人，也没有一个布施的对象，也没有一个我所布施的任何这种东西。那这样呢，你没有执着了，我布施出去了，我不觉得我在做善事。那我帮助了人呢，我也不觉得我帮助了谁，或是我把我最心爱的什么东西就是帮助了某某人，然后一直记住他。如果你在生活中能够学会，你做善事的时候一点执着都没有，做了就过了。那这样的话，其实呢，就慢慢可以呢，能够得到一种空了。这个空其实就是不执着，就是放下，做了事过就境迁，然后呢，这个事来则应，事去则静，就是说事情去了，你的心就定下来了。那事情来的时候呢，你的心知道怎么去应对。那这个就是开始呢，能够有体会到一点空，并不是说你什么都不做你什么都不做，那不叫空，那叫玩空。因为这个在佛法呢，不是说我们什么都不做，那就是空，那也错了。这个空是做了以后呢，心里就是很自在的，你不执着你在做什么。所以像我刚刚讲，我们布施的时候呢，不能执着说我在做布施，然后我要布施给谁，那我做了多少的布施，多少钱，多少财物。那这样的话，慢慢你这个心呢，就真的能够得到这种自在跟解脱了，因为它开始有这种可以入这个空性了。
So here in the Avatamsaka Sutra, it talks about the first samadhi that the Bodhisattva enters, called the samadhi of the emptiness of entry. Now, these states are all very, you could say, lofty. And so how do we make the Avatamsaka apply to us ordinary people, and so we can also apply it in our daily practice? So the first one is trying to make it practical. The first idea about emptiness is that it's about not attaching to anything. So one example is that of dana paramita, the perfection of giving. As we are giving or being generous, the paramitas, this perfection, comes from being able, literally it's translated as emptying out the three wheels. The wheels you turn. And these wheels are what? What are the three wheels? One wheel is the wheel of the donor. The second wheel is that of the recipient, and the third wheel is that of the gift. So you get rid of the giver, they get rid of the recipient, and you get rid of the gift. And not to say they don't exist, or you can say actually they don't exist, but you don't attach to any mark of those things. And this is truly emptying it out. And so when one does a good deed or is generous, one does not dwell on it at all. One does not see oneself as the giver. One does not see the other person as something receiving something, and one doesn't even see the gift as a gift. One just gives, but doesn't truly attach to any giving. So this is something that is very important if we want to cultivate the perfection of giving. And if we're able to practice in this way, bit by bit, we enter into seeing things as truly empty. And so in the Dharma, it's basically about, you could say, responding to situations as they come. We're not going out and attaching to situations. And also, we're not talking about doing nothing. It's not about just sitting there and doing nothing. And then that's the idea of cultivating emptiness. In fact, that's a dull emptiness, a kind of false emptiness that is what Buddhism actually discourages. This is the wrong kind of emptiness. In fact, what the Buddha is teaching is that we actually are engaged in the world, but when we're engaged in the world, we have absolutely no clinging. So when we give, we take the opportunity to give, but we don't remember it, we don't think about it, we don't mull over it, we don't calculate it for ourselves, we don't do all these things that are attaching to the giving. It's completely effortless. We're completely at ease. We're not calculating how much we gave, and looking for some kind of recognition. So this is truly the perfection of giving.
或是我们平常在修行中，因为一般在家人都很忙，还要工作有家庭，那么修行呢就要忙里偷闲，就是找时间来修行。有时候呢一点点空闲啊，或是走路，或是在车上这个时候也可以修行。那很多人都修这个念佛法门，因为这是最方便的。你呢随时随地都可以念佛。那为什么要念佛呢？这个念佛呢，就是要在我们往生临命终的时候呢来做准备的。因为临命终的时候，如果我们能够念佛，那这个时候呢，佛就会根据他的愿力来接引这个念佛的人往生到西方极乐世界去。所以呢，这个法门是最好的。可是念佛的时候呢，要怎么样？要一心念佛。你那个心呢，不能杂了，也不能乱了，也不能打妄想。所以呢，你要到一心不容易。那就是你念佛的时候呢，平常就是要练习说，我要能够没有执着，就是呢，你家庭的事情啊，你工作的事情啊，你杂七杂八的事情，这个时候呢都放下了，不打这个妄想，一心念佛。平常就这样训练，那你训练慢慢有功夫了，等到你临命终的那个时候，真的才能够一心念佛。因为你真的临命终的时候，需要万缘放下。然后一心念佛，就是把所有人的事情都要放下来。这个你不要说我这个事情还没有完成我什么财务没有处理，我哪些钱呢又放在哪里？我的孩子还小或是我还有什么事情呢还没有做完，或是我还有一个愿力，那我需要去完成。这些呢其实都是一种妄想跟执着。如果呢我们要念佛，或是我们往生的，还有这么多的放不下的事情，那你说你那个念佛呢，不可能一心的。既然不能一心，那个念佛呢，就不会有力量的。那往生呢，就一定有障碍。所以呢，平常呢要学会，就是说我念佛就是念佛了，那其他事情我就不管了。这个时候呢，只念佛这样的一个念。那这个容不容易做到？不容易的。这个看起来呢，道理很简单。那也好像不难嘛，事实上你试试看，很难的。你念佛的时候，很多妄想就进来了，平常就会这样。何况呢，人到往生的时候更苦的。人往生的时候呢，有病的苦，那有身体的苦，有心理的苦，那甚至还有很多这种也许呢冤亲债主来考验你那时候很多苦，你呢要定下心来念佛是不容易的。平常要念佛呢。你如果说这个身体这么好，那念佛呢都念得很多妄想，那何况在往生的时候呢，那个更不可能呢一心了。所以这个一心其实呢就是 没有执着万缘，所有的事情呢，你在念佛的时候就不要再想它了，就把它放下。
So, as you could say, householders, lay people, many times life is extremely busy. And we're busy with work, we're busy with family. It's very hard to find time to cultivate. And so, what do people do? Well, we try to find a little bit of time here and there throughout our day to practice. Maybe it's when we're walking around, we can recite, or when we're driving, we can also cultivate. And one thing people really like to practice is that of reciting the Buddha's name, reciting Amitabha Buddha's name. Because this is a very easy and you could say convenient practice. We can do it all the time. And what's the purpose of this? This allows us to prepare for the time of our death, the time of our rebirth. And so that we can have the opportunity to have Amitabha Buddha come and receive us and bring us to the Pure Land. So if we want to be able to recite so that we can go to the Pure Land at the time of death, in fact, in this life, we have to cultivate with single-minded focus. This, you could say, is not easy, because when we really want to try to practice with single-minded focus, we are oftentimes have a lot of other false thoughts. We're often attached to other things. To be truly single-minded, we have to be able to let go of everything and be single-mindedly concentrated. So how do we do this? We have to train ourselves so that when at the end of our lives, we've already done the proper training, the proper preparation. So to truly recite, we have to be able to say, okay, I'm now going to recite. I'm not going to worry about all the other things I'm worrying about. Just put it all down and just recite. In that way, then at death, we also will have to put it all down. Because, and when we're dying, it's not that easy. If we feel like, I haven't finished my business, I would still like to take care of that. I have some money over here that I haven't dealt with yet and taken care of yet. My kids are still young, they're still not grown up. I have a lot of unfinished business, or I have some wish or desire that's not fulfilled. All these things will distract us. And our mind is not single-minded. And if we can't put it down and we can't have single-minded focus, then it's not easy to be reborn in the Pure Land. So we must recite, and just recite. Don't care about anything else. Don't attach to anything else. So in a way, this sounds very, very simple, but in fact, it's not so simple. You can imagine that when we're right now trying to cultivate like this, it's you could say the conditions are fairly ideal. Our body is not in pain. We can concentrate our minds. But when it's time to pass away, it's going to be a lot more difficult. The body will be potentially in pain. There will be sickness. There potentially a lot of confusion will be all around. We might even have karmic debtors come to collect debts. So such and such things could happen, and make it very, very difficult. So we need to have a regular practice so that we are prepared. So when the time comes to die, we have no attachments. We don't hold on to anything.
这个修行呢，就是要面对我们真实的境界。我刚刚讲到这个临命终我可以讲点故事给大家听有一个法师呢，他有一次去帮一个呢重病的人助念，那个人呢大概就是快要往生了，所以呢这个法师还有一些人呢去帮他去助念。那么去的时候呢，这个病人他的神识还很清楚的，就是他还知道很多事情。那么他们就开始帮他助念，那念了一段时间，最后呢，那个病人呢躺在床上，他居然呢把他的手呢伸到口袋里面，然后拿出了一叠钞票，那开始呢数钞票。别人帮他助念，结果你看这个要临命终的人，他在算钞票。你想想看，为什么会这样？因为呢，这个就是一种执着。人呢病重了，本来呢应该要修行念佛结果这时候他心里放不下的还是钞票，还是那种习气很重。也许呢平常呢算钞票、数钞票数得很习惯了， 结果生了重病，人家帮他助念，要让他去往生，这个时候他放不下。那所以这个法师看了就很害怕，他说呢，那人呢都病成这个样子了，人家都算以为他应该往生，帮他助念，结果这个时候呢，他不念佛，而居然呢拿了钞票出来这个数，所以呢，这个可见呢，我们说要真正的放下是不容易的，要把一些事情呢空不容易。或是呢，我几年前呢，有一个学生呢，他有一次晚上，他就跟很匆忙的跟我讲说，我的母亲呢快要往生了，那那个您可不可以去跟我这个母亲呢讲讲话，让她呢安心的走？那因为他是我的学生啊，所以我就说好啊，马上呢就去医院。我去医院的时候呢，看到很多人帮他的妈妈在助念，然后呢，他的妈妈也是躺在床上，其实呢已经是一种弥留了。我们都知道弥留的时候呢，人的呼吸呢是往外吐气的，就是他呼吸动作很大，已经到那个状态了。但是我发现他的母亲呢，两个眼睛好大，那个眼睛睁得很大，那个都不合起来的。那而且呢，一直瞪着，就是那个眼睛一直看着他呢，就怕那个眼睛闭上去。那时候我看了就觉得很痛心，为什么？就是说，知道呢，他这个母亲呢放不下，因为他的孩子还小啊，10几岁。那妈妈呢，平常也学佛啊，也吃素啊，可是面对境界的时候，那个考验就来了。就是说，因为平常呢，我们放不下的事情很多，等到呢，真的要临命终了。这个执着呢更深，而且呢那个时候不能空了，不能空了。你看他就念着这个孩子不肯走的，其实就已经不能不走了。但是为什么他呢还放不下呢？因为他希望还有一丝希望，就是说即使呢，我们都觉得他没有希望了，应该是就是要走了，但是呢他却不肯走，所以我就知道那个人呢到这种情况呢，他有一个意志力，就是呢撑着他，希望呢他还有一丝希望。事实上呢，这就是因为呢平常他的那种执着的事情太多了，像我刚刚讲的家庭小孩啊，或是有些人有钱财事业放不下，那所以平常执着重呢，你到往生的时候要很小心。那平常就是要学会放下，要空了，就是不把它看得很重，否则呢，你说要修行呢，这是谈不上的。那这个空不是没有，只是说有，但是呢，我不执着它而已。
So, so we need to be able to see things as they actually are. In Buddhism especially, we talk about seeing things as it actually is. And in that way, we don't want to attach to the situation. We want to be able to see things in their actual nature, which is that they're empty. And so I can tell you a couple stories. One story is a Dharma master went to recite on behalf of someone who was extremely sick. They were at the very end of their life. So when he went to see this person, that person was actually still quite alert, quite awake. His consciousness was still there. And all around people were reciting on the person's behalf. And this person was laying in bed. And as people started reciting over some time, he raised out his hand and went in his pocket and grabbed out 钞票是钱吗？还是钞票是 check? Paper money. 钞票. So he pulled out a stack of cash, in his pocket, and he started counting the money in his pocket. And this monk who was watching him was quite struck by this, because everybody was reciting the Buddha's name for him, and he didn't recite the Buddha's name. In fact, he started pulling out his money and started counting the money. And so he could see the kind of the depth of the attachment this person had to money, and his own his potentially this might have been his habit from the past, that he would just count his money quite often. So even though he was at the very end of his life, and very, very sick, he couldn't put this down. He would still put all his money and start counting it. So so this is when one's not able to empty things out. We're not truly empty and truly able to let go. Of course, it's not easy. This is not something easy to do. Another example of this was a student of mine in school asked me, could I go speak with his mother, because his mother was about to pass away, and I could speak with her to help her, you could say, have some peace of mind. And of course, since he's my student, and so I said, okay, I'm willing to speak with her. And so we went to the hospital, and she's there at the end of her life, and she's already very, very close to death. If people know at the end of life, there's a stage when the breathing becomes very, very heavy. It becomes very forced and hard to breathe. And so she was right at that point where it's already very, very hard to breathe. But from the look on her face, and there was a sense of confusion, of not wanting to go, especially looking at her eyes. Her eyes were open really wide and staring out, and you could see a kind of a fear and kind of anxiety, and there was this fear of not wanting to close her eyes. She wanted to keep it open, and it was, and I saw that. It really, really struck me. And she had a little boy who was still around 10 years old, still very young, and it was like it was didn't want to go. It didn't want to just leave him. And so, although she was also Buddhist, she's cultivating, and also was vegetarian, still at the end of life, it's not easy to really put things down. But in a time when we're dying, you have no choice. We have to let it go, because it's the body doesn't give us a choice. And so that's really when the test comes. Can we truly put things down? Can we really let things go and let things be empty? Because although we hold on to it, we have no choice, but we have to let it go, and then we end up fighting it. So you can see at the end of life, for some people, they hold on very, very tightly. They hold on with a force of will to continue on their life, because they want to really live. They really want to hold on, because they have something that they're attached to very, very tightly that they can't let go of. So in our cultivation, we really need to be very careful not to really attach to things in this way. We want to be able to let things go, to put things down, and not take things too seriously. Don't take things too seriously, because then over time it becomes a really deep attachment. Because when we pass away, we're gonna have to be able to let it go as well.
所以要这个入空三昧，事实上，在菩萨来讲是证入了，他已经证到这种境界，才是真的是入了这个空的三昧。那对我们来讲，当然日常生活中都是修行，所以平常就是要练习，不是说我马上呢就可以像菩萨一样，是生活中你学会放下了，那把最初的先放下，那个最初的是贪嗔痴嘛。那接着呢，还有这种功高我慢啊，或是对佛法不相信，生出这种疑念，或是邪知邪见，这都是一种我们必须要放下啊，慢慢把它空的。那或是呢，在我们的生活中，除了我们的家庭或是钱财啊，这个钱财呢也要放下，因为钱财呢，它本身呢也是空性的。这个人呢走的时候呢，一无所有，就是除了你的业啊，你在这个世间上所造的业，那其他什么都带不走了。你有这种权力、有地位、有财富，那这个时候呢，人死了都是一场空。因此，在普贤恨怨品呢，就告诉我们说，人临命终的时候呢，他的亲属都要舍离的，他的财富呢也要舍离的，或是他的国家或他是一个国王，他的国家、土地、人民、大臣呢都要舍离的，什么都没有。那么那个时候呢，如果你是修普贤恨怨品，修普贤十大愿，什么跟你不舍离呢？你看这修行有一个好处的，他说呢，你在世间上的这个亲属财富都舍离了，但是唯有这个十大愿王，普贤十大愿王呢，他不想舍离，他就跟着你，不但跟着你呢，而且呢，在你的面前引导着这个 亡者临命中的人呢，往生到西方极乐世界去。所以这个修行呢，那个对我们呢临终是有很大的帮助的，因为呢，那个我们临命中有障碍，就是因为刚刚讲了很多这种状况，或是呢，很多人他呢做了很多事情啊，那因为做多了，这个执着就很深，放不下。所以你可以看看呢，这个上人呢，他其实是很放下的人，他呢什么都可以空的。上人从中国东北，那么他到香港去，到香港的时候呢，上人建了3座道场，一个是西乐园寺，一个是大屿山的慈心寺，还有一个就是在那个市中心跑马地的佛教讲堂。那上人在那边1949年到1962年的13年间建的道场，他一点执着都没有。这个因缘成熟了，他呢就到美国来建立道场，弘扬佛法。他把道场呢都放下了，交给他的弟子去管理。那上人放下，现在香港的道场还在不在？还在，因为放下嘛，所以呢他还在。只是有一个道场呢，西乐园是因为呢政府征收那个政府呢把地收回去了，所以现在那个庙没有了。但是呢，慈心寺还有佛教讲堂现在都还在。等到上人到美国以后呢，上人赤手空拳，他什么也没有，一个人到美国来，慢慢他又建立道场，有金山寺，有万佛圣城，有这个像洛杉矶的金轮寺，或是呢法界圣城。现在呢，欧洲也有道场，那么马来西亚也有道场，台湾也有道场，到处都是道场，20几个。但是上人呢，他是很自在的，他说他万佛圣城都可以放下，万佛圣城这么大。一般人呢，一定会执着说这个道场是我建立的，我要怎么样怎么样。但是上人呢，他心胸很大，因为他把自己空的，这个空的，他就说呢，这个万佛圣城呢是给这个世界的所有众生的，不光是佛教徒。你呢，只要愿意修行的，只要愿意呢遵守这个万佛圣城规矩的，都可以到万佛圣城来修行，不分呢种族，不分宗教，不分国籍的。上人可以做到这么自在，所以呢，他对这个他所建立的道场一点执着也没有，这真的是空的。因为在上人在香港的时候，那时候他有一个弟子是一个比丘尼，这个比丘尼呢，当时呢在家的时候就帮这个上人呢开始来兴建这个慈心寺。慈心寺在大屿山呢，它在山上，要盖庙的时候很辛苦了，因为那时候几乎没有路可以走，很多东西呢从山上要背着走2个小时、3个小时呢才能够到山上去，所以那时候要盖那个庙很辛苦，或是呢要去山上呢去挖石头建道场。因此上人那个弟子呢参与了这个建庙，他对这个慈心寺非常的执着，就是说他放不下，因为那个庙呢就是他从头呢开始来帮忙呢兴建起来的。所以等到他出家了，那么上人教他说：“你到美国来，那来这里修行。”他放不下，他说：“这个他要照顾这个慈心寺，照顾这个庙。”那后来上人就跟他讲说呢：“我这个万佛圣城都可以放下了，为什么你放不下呢？”这个意思就是说，万佛圣城这个庙这么大，那我从这个没有到有，那我都可以把它放下了，为什么你一个慈心寺你就放不下呢？这个就是上人在教导弟子，就说不管你做什么事情，你盖了庙，你教化了众生，那心里呢要没有这个执着，就像上人一样，他讲了这么多的法，那么教化了很多众生，同时呢建立很多道场，但是呢心里呢就是没有执着，就是一种空就是他有这种正入空性了。
So here the Bodhisattva empties the samadhi enters the samadhi of emptiness. And so the Bodhisattva is able to really empty themselves. For ourselves, we might not be able to enter this kind of state, this kind of high level state of the Bodhisattva. So where do we begin in our practice? Well, the first place to start is we need to learn how to let go. And where do we let go? We can first start with what's the most coarse. The most coarse things are our greed, our lust, our hatred or anger, and our delusion, our ignorance. We let go of the three poisons. And then if we can let go of those, then we can also let go of the next stage, which is, for instance, our pride, our ego, our sense of self, our doubt, and also all the various kind of incorrect or mistaken views that we have, to be able to let those things go. So that's the next stage. So bit by bit, we can start with the most coarse, and then let go of things that are more and more subtle. For instance, also money or wealth. We can also let that go. Because in the end, when we die, we can't take any money with us. What's said is we only can take karma with us. Our karma is what follows, the deeds that we act, the intentional actions we take. That's what follows us from life to life. All the status, all the power, all the things that we accumulate, all those don't follow us to our next life. Everything we have to let go of. In the chapter 40 of the Avatamsaka, the conduct and vows of universal worthy Bodhisattva, in that chapter, it talks about how at the end of life, one's family, one's wealth, and it gives the example of a king. So the ministers, the citizens, the kingdom, everything is cannot be brought along when one is about to die. But in the sutra it says, the 10 vows, the 10 practices and vows of universal worthy Bodhisattva, these will stay with the person as they pass away. And what they will do, they will guide the person so that they are able to be reborn in the Pure Land. So this kind of cultivation really has a lot of benefits, especially at the moment of death. Many situations, many conditions can arise when we're about to pass away. And so right now is a time when we want to be able to let things go, be able to put things down. For Venerable Master, he really cultivated to a point where everything for him was empty. If you look at his life story, he was a very at ease and you could say unattached. He was in China originally, and he went to Hong Kong. And then in Hong Kong, he built 3 monasteries. He built the Western Bliss Gardens is one monastery. There's another monastery called Sixing Si. I don't know how you would translate that, but it's another monastery on Lantau Island in Hong Kong. And then another monastery, which is the Buddhist Lecture Hall, which was next to the racetrack. He established these 3 monasteries. But when the cause and conditions came for him to come to the United States, he just put those down and came to the United States and had his disciples take care of the monasteries. And he came to America with pretty much nothing. And just from there, bit by bit, built things up and established the Buddhist Lecture Hall, Gold Mountain Monastery, the City of Thousand Buddhas. Then bit by bit, there's the Gold Wheel Monastery. There's monasteries now even in Australia and Malaysia, Taiwan, all around the world. There's various monasteries, 20 plus. And however, he didn't attach to any of these. He was very much at ease. He himself said, and in terms of his actions, was very at ease. Even with the City of 10,000 Buddhas, he says, I'm not attached to the City of 10,000 Buddhas. This is just a place. He saw it as empty. He said, I give the City of 10,000 Buddhas to all living beings. All living beings, regardless of religion, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of where they come from, their background, as long as they're willing to cultivate and abide by the rules of the City of 10,000 Buddhas, then they're welcome to cultivate here. He was very open-hearted, very big-hearted. He wanted to create a place for people to cultivate. He didn't attach to, the City of 10,000 Buddhas as a place that he founded, he built. This is his place. No, he wanted to give it to all living beings. There's another story, which was a disciple, a bhikshuni who was in Hong Kong, who worked really hard at building Siching Monastery. And Siching Monastery, if people know, is on a kind of a mountain. And in the very early days, there was not a very good road. You couldn't drive a car up. So you had to walk up, and it'd be maybe a 2 or 3 hour hike. And so building that monastery was a lot of work. They had to carry up all the materials, all the work. And so to build that monastery was not easy. So she developed a kind of attachment to this monastery because all the hard work that was put into building it. And so the Venerable Master at one point asked her to come to the United States, to 16,000 Buddhists to cultivate. And she said, no, I think I'll stay here in Hong Kong and take care of the monastery to protect this way place, this monastery. The Venerable Master told her, I've come to America and I'm not even attached to the city of 10,000 Buddhists, such a large place. How come you can't put down the Cixing monastery? And so he was teaching her, to be able to let go. So the Venerable Master, throughout his life, taught many, many people and built many places. But he didn't attach to any of these things at all. For him, it was all empty. So he was very, very at ease at all times. So he was able to enter this kind of samadhi of emptiness.
自性空三昧，这个自性呢，就是我们的佛性，也就是我们的真心。那么在佛教有很多不同的名相，像在这个华严经呢就讲这个真如，那么楞严经就讲这个如来藏性。那有些呢就讲这个实相，所以呢，其实自性呢，就是简单讲就是我们的佛性。这个自性本来是空的，自性呢，像我们在晚课你读这个心经就知道了，这个自性呢是不垢不净、不增不减、不生不灭的。那它呢本来就是一个空性，但是呢，为众生呢，为什么这个自性是空的？但是我们有这么多的执着呢？有这么多贪嗔痴呢？就是我们从过去无始劫来，因为有这种疑惑、无明惑了，就是我们有那个很细很细的这种无明呢，所以产生很多疑惑，所以造了很多的恶业。这业呢，就变成贪嗔痴，或是执着，放不下。其实呢，如果我们明白这个道理呢，我们就是要返本还原，就是回到我们的自性，回到这个自性是清净的，它没有任何一个执着，它本来就是一个空性，没有贪嗔痴的，也没有说我要修戒定慧的执着，连这个对法的执着都空了。那么问题是我们明白道理，但是要回归到这个自性空，事实上不是这么容易的，因为这个执着是长期以来很深很深的。那么要靠我们自己，不是靠别人。有时候呢，我们自己如果不努力不自己放下的话，那别人要来帮我们，也不一定会有这种效果的。所以呢，这个就讲说呢，自助人助，我们要自己呢帮助自己，然后别人才有能力来帮助我们。就像我们掉到河里去如果呢有个人丢了一条绳子到河里呢，希望我们抓住绳子，能够呢把你拉上来救上岸。但是呢，那个绳子丢下去了，你不愿意伸出你的手去拉这一条绳子，那这个人也不能救你。所以这个在佛教来讲，就讲佛度有缘人。这个佛呢度的是跟他有缘的，没有这个缘或是缘呢还不成熟的，连佛都没有办法。那佛法也是一样，不是说这个佛法这么好，全世界的人都愿意来相信他，或是呢，这个释迦牟尼佛出世的时候，就把这个世界上的众生呢都度尽了他们呢都开悟了，才入涅槃的没有了。这个佛在印度也只是度了有缘的众生，然后呢，时间到了，佛就入涅槃。但是呢，把这个佛法留在世界上。现在呢，我们可以根据遗留在世间上的这个佛法继续来修行，也可以明白说这个佛法就在教导我们，我们的自性是空的，我们要回归到我们的自性。那我们要靠自己来修行，把贪嗔痴给熄灭了。那这样的话，就说我们自己帮助自己，同时呢，如果你遇到善知识或是遇到佛，才有办法。否则呢，别人要帮你，你不接受帮忙，那这个虽然呢道理上是自性空的或是我也想修行，但是呢我现在时间还没到，等我这个事情这个做好了完成了，我的心愿了了，我再来修行，那可能就太晚了。所以在佛住世的时候这个释迦牟尼佛呢，他有时候可以度得了人，有时候呢度不了人的。就像以前 有一个木匠，这个木匠呢，他很勤奋的工作，他呢就是要累积一点财富，然后呢为他的家庭的人呢，让他们生活得更好。那有一次呢，这个佛就观察到了，这个木匠呢只剩下7天的寿命。那佛很慈悲，希望这个木匠呢，他在生前能够来供养三宝，或是呢佛呢可以用佛法来教化他。那么因此佛呢就到他的家里去去跟他化缘。这个木匠就讲说呢，哦，你不要再到我家来了，我现在很忙啊，我呢这个我的小孩子还小啊，我要把他养大了。那等到呢我的小孩子呢大了，这个我呢要帮他娶一门媳妇，然后呢我还希望能够抱抱孙子我的愿望呢就是这辈子我希望我的小孩子长大，同时呢也有孙子可以抱。那同时呢我是一个木匠，我希望呢为我的孩子呢要造房子，把那房子呢造一个这个夏天住的很凉快的，那冬天呢住的房子能够很暖和的。等到我这个愿望满的时候呢，那个时候我可以呢跟着佛来修行了。所以现在我太忙了，你就不要到我家来了。那佛呢并没有放弃他第一次来了，第二次又来，这个木匠又跟佛又是这样讲。那第3次也来了，后来实在没办法了，佛呢也就不再去了。那么这个木匠呢，就有一天他就盖到第7天了，他呢就造了房子。这个房子呢其实已经快造好了。那房子最重要就是这个房子那个屋顶上那个梁梁呢就是可以把这个房子给撑住了。那个木匠呢就到屋顶上把这个梁呢就是全部都完成了，然后呢他就从这个屋顶的这个梁上呢跳下来。但是他跳下来的时候，他忘记了他有一把斧头呢放在这个梁上，所以等到他跳下到地上的时候呢，那个梁上的那把斧头呢，因为震动了，所以呢也掉下来了。这一掉下来呢，就打到这个木匠的头上，所以呢木匠就这样子往生了。7天呢，果然就像佛所这种观察到的，知道他只有7天的寿命，本来要度他的，可是这个木匠呢，你看他这个事要做，那个事要做这个事情还没有完成，他很多事情很多愿望。那我们人生也是这样子就是我们未了的事情，其实呢等到我们要死的那一天呢都做不完的。你去列一张清单你今天呢完成了一些事情，你明天又有新的事情可以做的，永远都做不完。那因此呢这个修行呢你日常生活中就是需要学习放下的嘛。你今天呢尽心尽力把你该做的事情责任完成了，那你呢问心无愧了，你做完了，那你就放下了。所以呢这个佛呢因为要度这个木匠，他知道这个木匠往生了，佛就讲了说呢，这个世间这个财我们所有的这种财富是什么？5家共有的。如果你呢要行善要布施呢，你不及时，那以后呢你一定后悔的。就是本来你现在可以做一些功德做善事，但是你不把握时间来做，等到有一天你想要做了，那个时候可能你没有钱了，或是那时候呢你已经没有能力可以做了，或是像这个木匠呢说以后再跟着来供养佛或是呢来跟着佛出家，那么他7天就死了。所以呢他怎么可以在那个时候呢后悔也来不及了。那这就告诉我们呢，世间呢所有种种，其实呢我们看的是很真实，其实它是空性的，就是真正你要走的时候，这些不会跟着我们走。那事实上它也是虚幻的，这都是一种生灭法。所以人走的时候呢，只有业随身，你造的业呢会跟着你走，那其他都不会。那这个业呢它不空的，因为呢业就像一个那个影子一样，如影随形。所以我们造了善业，那或是造了恶业，等到死了就随这个善恶业呢去受果报。但是呢世间这些呢，如果你太执着了， 那么就会障碍我们修行。所以，如果我们想要知道说我们的自性是空的，那你对呢世间这个所有，不管是人、是事、是物，甚至呢我们现在学习佛法，连这个佛法呢，你都要把它就是空的，没有执着啊。不是说叫你不学佛法，你要学佛法，但是你不要执着说我在学佛啊，那为什么别人不学佛啊？或是那些不学佛人多愚痴啊？如果你这样的话，那就是不对了，因为你呢对这个法不空的。
Okay, so the self-nature. So this one, next one is Samadhi, the emptiness of our own nature. The Samadhi of emptiness of own nature, or the self-nature. So when the Buddha talks about the self-nature, it's usually referring to the Buddha nature. That of the, you could say also, in the Shurangama Sutra, it talks about as the Tathagata Garbha, the treasury, the thus come one. Or in the Avatamsaka Sutra, it talks about it as true suchness. And so, in this case, the self-nature is also empty. It's also our awakened nature. The Heart Sutra describes it as well, saying that nothing is produced, nothing ceases. It's nothing arises, nothing ceases, nothing's produced, nothing disappears. It's empty. However, if this awakened nature is empty, then how come for us living beings we have so many attachments? Where does this all come from? This comes from our ignorance, and our ignorance produces many, deep habitual patterns that cause us to go and then have the three poisons, which we then create karma and various attachments and do all sorts of things that follow us from life to life. But originally, within our true nature, our awakened nature, there is no poison. There are no three poisons. And there's no need to cultivate the three non-outflow practices of Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna. But because our habits are so deep, we must cultivate to be able to get rid of the three poisons. So ultimately, it's empty, but there's a process for us to purify to get back to that place. So we must rely on ourselves in our cultivations. We can't exclusively rely on other people to help us in our practice. If we don't really help ourselves, other people can't really help us. An analogy of this is, for instance, if we're in we're drowning in this kind of the ocean, you could say. We're drowning in the ocean, in this big body of water, and somebody throws us a rope for us to pull ourselves out. However, if we don't actually grab the rope and help ourselves, there's no way the other person can help us. So it's two ways. We must be able to help ourselves so that we really can cultivate. The Buddha himself says that he can't really help those living beings which he has no affinity with. So he just is able to rescue those he has an affinity, or those conditions are now ripened, or you could say come into a time when he can actually help. So in the time of the Buddha, when he was teaching in India, he wasn't able to save everybody. Some people just passed the Buddha by. They saw the Buddha, but they weren't able to accept the teachings. And he wasn't able to save everybody in the world. He was taught just those people he had an affinity with. But he did leave the Buddha Dharma, the teachings, for us to follow, so that we can now use them to cultivate ourselves. And so he taught us how that although our self-nature is empty, and how to return back to that pure, that emptiness, the awakened nature, and how to let go of the three poisons. How that we can meet a good and wise advisor, a good and wise teacher, as well as the Buddha, and return back to our awakened nature. So some people think, well, I don't have time now to cultivate. What I'll do is I'll finish all my business first, all my responsibilities, everything that I'm doing first, and then after I got everything done, then I'll cultivate. Maybe after I retire, then I can cultivate. Well, that potentially could be too late. There's another story when Shakyamuni Buddha was teaching, he saw that a carpenter was at that time only had 7 days left of his life, and he was a very hard-working carpenter. He worked all the time, wishing to support his family, make some money, so that his whole family could have a more comfortable life. But the Buddha saw that he only has 7 days left to live, and so went there to wishing to give him an opportunity to plant some blessings, to make some offerings, and to teach him the Dharma. So on one of the day, he went there for an alms round, but the carpenter said, "Don't come here. I'm too busy right now. My young boy, he's still a little kid. He still needs to grow up. My wish is that when he grows up, I can find him a good wife, then he can have a good family, and then I can have a grandson. All I want in my life is to be able to hold my grandson. That will make me really happy. And what I would like to do is, since I'm a carpenter, is I want to be able to build him a really good house. I want this house to be, when it's the summertime, it's really cool. In the wintertime, it's really warm. It's a really good house. And so I don't have time right now to cultivate. I have to do all these things I have to do. After I finish all that, then I'll come join you, Buddha, to then cultivate the way." And so the Buddha, however, didn't let go, you could say not let go, didn't give up on this person. So the second time he still went there. And again, this carpenter said the same thing. And the third time, he also went again, and the carpenter again said, "I'm too busy. I have all these things I have to do. I can't cultivate." And so the Buddha then didn't return back. Kind of you could say, just kind of let the cause and conditions work themselves out, because he didn't have the affinity. And so, as the Buddha saw, on the 7th day, the carpenter was actually about to finish building a house, and he was putting in the roof beam. So he put in the roof beam to finish the house, and so as he was jumping down on the ground from the roof, he left his hammer, 锤子, maybe it's like the sledgehammer, futosu hammer, axe. Oh, his axe. So his axe. Ooh, that's even more painful. He left his axe on the top where the roof beam was. He jumped down, and when he was landed on the ground, it shook the ground a little bit. So his axe actually fell down, and hit him on the head. Probably, I guess, sliced his head open, and so he died on the spot. And so that was on the 7th day. So his life ended then. And so there's a sense that he wanted to do all these things after he finished all these things, and then he can cultivate. But even then, it was too late. He couldn't continue to cultivate because his life finished. And so what we can do is that we have to learn to be able to put things down and cultivate the way. Don't wait until we are after we quote unquote finish everything, and then we can cultivate. In fact, we want to be able to start cultivating right now, because we don't know if there's later on we have an opportunity to do so. And so what we want to do is we want to take care of our basic responsibilities. The things that we have to take care of, we take care of. But then when we finish doing our responsibilities, we just let them go. Don't dwell in them, don't attach to them, and just cultivate. The Buddha said that all the money that we make, all the wealth that we make, in fact, it's all public. It's all held by the public, because we can't hold on to it. We can't take it with us when we die. So we should take the opportunity in our life to be able to share it with others, to give it away. It's a real great blessing. Because later on, maybe we won't have the money to give away. Maybe we don't have the ability or the time to give it away. Or maybe we don't even have a life. We die, and we don't have the chance to give it away, to share. And so even then, or when we actually die, it's even too late to have regrets, because we're already dead. So if we hold on to many things, then when it's time to go, we can't put them down, and it's not easy to then go peacefully off to rebirth. None of those things follow us. None of those things go with us. All the money in the world, they don't follow us. Only the karmic actions that we take, they follow us. they're, you can say, quote unquote, not empty. They follow us like a shadow. All the good things we've done, all the bad things we've done, and we receive the effects of our actions as just as the things that we've done. And so if we are really, really attached to things, then this will in the end be an obstruction in our cultivation, and cause us not to be able to really realize and see that our self-nature is empty, that all the cultivate so that we can let go of the three poisons, and to not attach to any living being, any people, to the self, to any situation that we're in, the external environment or conditions, or any objects, these material things around us, not to attach to any of those things. Or even if we learn the Dharma, we don't want to attach to Buddhism and say, okay, I'm learning the Dharma, well, why are all these other people not Buddhists? Why are they doing all these things? And start judging other people and thinking that they're bad people. Then we're starting to attach to Buddhism as well. So in fact, what we want to do is really cultivate a mind that's unattached, that doesn't cling to anything.
所以要能够得自性空，就是要放下自我的执着。其实，首先呢，要先把我们这种三毒的习气呢，先扫除了。就是呢，不要有贪嗔痴，贪的执着没有了，嗔的执着也没有了，痴的执着也放下了。那这个可以呢，证得自性空。事实上，这个贪呢，很多刚刚讲了很多了。那么这个嗔呢，嗔就是嗔恨啊，发脾气。这个脾气呢不容易改。上人呢常常讲说呢，他要跟大家画一个大圆啊。上人不攀圆，但是要画大圆。他说呢，我要跟你们呢画圆，那么你们每个人都要布施给我。那上人就讲说，这个布施呢不是要你布施钱给我，你呢每个人把你们的脾气呢布施给我。那上人希望每个人没有脾气。那为什么呢？因为上人知道每个人这种贪嗔痴很重。如果你修行呢，你不从这里下手，那么你说你要证得你的自性、那个空性、那个佛性，那是不可能的。所以修行呢，一定有一个下手处的，就是本来很贪的东西啊，你就不贪了。所以六大宗旨呢，不争不贪，这个是很重要的。还有不求，或是呢，我们常常呢会发脾气啊，或是对人不满。这个也是不好的，所以呢，也要把它去除了，放下了。你要去没有这个嗔了，那这个自性空才能够显现的。那事实上呢，我们修行在很多方面呢，都需要下很大的决心。你不下决心呢，要把我们一个习气毛病呢，要给除掉，没有这么容易的。那个习气毛病呢，是也有时候不是今生才有的，是过去生中呢已经这个很久很久以来呢，长远以来一种习气，所以呢，你一下子要改掉它不容易。这个讲到这个发脾气呢，以前有一个法师啊，他出家修行了，他这个家境呢，原来他还没有出家以前，他家里的环境很好，家里很有钱，土地很多。那因为呢家里有钱啊，家里很多佣人，所以这个法师呢在家的时候，他脾气很大了，因为有钱嘛，所以呢家里的佣人呢，他看不顺眼了，做错事情啊，他就骂他们、打他们，那或是常常对别人发脾气。后来这个法师他觉悟了，他就去出家。出家以后呢，他也知道自己的最大的问题就是脾气。那他很想把这个脾气呢给改了，但是呢改不掉。每次呢那个境界来了，他就生气，一生气呢又骂人又打人。所以呢，他觉得如果他出家了，不把这个脾气改掉，那这个修行呢一点用处也没有。所以这个法师呢，他就找了一个工人就是请了一个人，说呢告诉他，你帮我做一个事情。你呢如果看到呢我发脾气的时候呢，你就用这个棍子他给他一个棍子，说呢你就用这个棍子打我。那这个人就说不行啊，我是你的工人啊，你就变成我的主人，我怎么可以打我的主人呢？这个法师说，你不用怕，你打我呢不但没有过，而且有功。你每次打我一次呢，我给你2块钱那时候2块钱很多的，可能比现在的美金大概20块钱都还要多吧。那你看这个 他请人来打他，就是要他不发脾气。后来这个工人呢，果然呢就照他的指示，每次呢这个法师控制不住自己的脾气的时候呢，就拿那个棍子开始打这个法师。等到打完了，他脾气呢大概也消了。那可是呢有没有改？很难改。这个打了100多次了，那个法师付了200多块钱，还是发脾气。所以呢，这个你看这个法师下决心要改脾气，都不是这么容易的。可是因为他有这种真心诚心要改他的脾气所以有一天呢，这个法师呢就教他的工人说：“你呢去帮我买一个桶子就是装东西的一个桶子。”那他特别指示说：“我这个桶子是那个你去街上买，有一个干净的空的是最好。如果你买不到一个空的桶子呢，你就买那个装煤油的那煤油就是中国人呢会点那个煤油灯。”那个点灯的那个油，你就帮我买一个空的这个煤油灯的这种桶子呢回来，我们把它洗一洗干净了，我就是要一个这样的桶子。这个工人呢到街上去了，找来找去，因为那个地方没有卖煤油的，所以就找不到这样的一个桶子。那所以就找很久，找到最后没办法，他呢就去买了一个那个装酱油的桶子。就反正有一个桶子嘛，就带回来了。结果呢，因为去了很久，这个法师呢等这个工人等了很久，因为他就是要用这个桶子，等了很久呢，本来已经很生气了。等到这个工人一回来呢，看到他的桶子不是他要买的那个煤油的桶子，而是一个酱油的桶子，所以呢更生气了，说：“你这个人，我要你买个桶子，去买了这么久，而且我要你买什么样的桶子，你又给我买一个酱油的桶子。”所以呢，很生气。这个呢，法师呢一生气就打人了，不但骂而且打，就那个拳打脚踢对这个工人呢一直打。这个工人呢被打了受不了，他一下子也很生气。他刚好把那个买了那个桶子呢，还没有交给这个法师，就拿起那个桶子呢，就照着那个法师就一直打，也拼命的打。结果那个一打呢，打了一下子过了一个时间，那个法师呢就跟这个工人说：“哦，你不要再打了，你不要再打了。以后呢，从此以后呢，你不需要再打我了为什么？因为那个法师呢，被这么一打呢，他那个脾气没有了。为什么脾气没有呢？我也不知道。不过那个这个讲这个故事的是那个慧生法师慧生法师是上人的一个同修道友，曾经。他就讲过那个梵网经菩萨戒的，所以是在讲这个戒的时候，他讲的这个故事是在东北的一个法师，是真实的故事。那慧生法师就说，因为呢，这个法师呢，大概身上有一个什么脾气鬼或者怎么样，就控制他来发脾气的。那这一下呢，被打得太厉害了，所以那个就跑掉了。跑掉以后呢，这个法师以后呢，从来呢就不发脾气了，他脾气就好了。那我讲这个就是说，在我们修行的时候呢，你有什么毛病你要改掉它，你真的要下决心的就是你要去受很多苦才能够把这个习气改掉，否则呢不容易的。
So if we talk about the self nature, to really be able to let go and cultivate is not easy. To really put down the 3 poisons, not having any attachment, not having attachment to greed, not having attachment to hatred or anger, not to have any attachment to delusion. That's not easy. And I've already spoken quite a lot about the greed, but how about hatred or anger? This is very hard to change. Having a big temper, getting upset all the time, it's very hard to change one's habits. And Venerable Master said, you know what, I'm going to ask a favor of all of you. I'm gonna you could say beg from you for something. And then Venerable Master said his principle was never begging. So why would he beg from people? What he wanted wasn't money. What he said is, what I want from you, everybody, is your anger. Give me your anger. And why? Because he wants all of his disciples not to have any anger. He wanted them to be able to let go of that, give it to him, so that they could cultivate. So the Venerable Master was willing to receive it from everybody. However, really trying to change our habits, not get angry, to really be content with what we have, and be empty, and have this emptiness of our self-nature, is something that we really have to work hard at. if we really want to change our habits, because our habits are very, very deep, they could be just from, deeply planted in this life, but it can also come to many lives in the past. So these habits can be very, very, very deep. So wanting to change them doesn't mean that we can change immediately. We really have to make a strong resolve to say we're going to change our bad habits to be able to change them. There's a story about anger, about another Dharma master. And he left home because before he left home, he was very, very wealthy. Came from a very wealthy family. They had a lot of money, they had a lot of wealth, they had a lot of land, they had a lot of servants. And so he had a really big temper. And whenever any of the servants and people in his household messed up, didn't do what he wanted, he would get really upset and even scold really harshly and hit the person, and he would just kind of throw a fit. And so his temper was really, really big. At one point he realized, I have such a big temper, that's not a good thing. So he wanted to change for the better. And he also decided to leave home. So when he became a monk, he still had his big temper, in the sense that when situations didn't go his way, he would still get really, really angry. And he thought to himself, this is not right. I can't just keep getting angry like this. I have to change. And so what did he do? He thought, okay, what I'll do is I'll get one of the people to teach me. And so he went and told one of the servants that, okay, whenever I get angry, I'm going to give you this stick, and you hit me with this stick for every time I get angry. And so this is actually a true story, I guess. And so the person said, I can't do that. You're my you could say somebody that I like, the host, like my master. I can hit my master. He says, no. Not only will you not be punished, in fact, you will get benefit from it. I'll give you $2 every time you hit me. And he says, at that time, $2 is probably worth a lot more than what it is now. Maybe it's probably more than $20 here in the United States. And so basically he could pay this person, this servant, every time he got angry to hit him. And so every time he got angry, the servant would hit him. And so this happened more than 100 times. But he still can't change his anger. He still would get angry. Every time he get angry, this guy would hit him. And he's paid over $200. But one day he was told this servant to go out and buy a bucket. And he just wanted a specific bucket. He wanted a very clean bucket, because he only needed to do something with it. He said, if you can't find a really clean and empty bucket, then I want you to get this bucket that has this kind of, we could say mayo, sesame oil? Mayo, sesame oil? Lamp oil. Kerosene. So basically it's very easy to clean, I guess. This bucket, if you buy it, then you can clean it very easily. So he wanted this kind of bucket. And so this servant went out to the market, looked all around, and couldn't find this bucket, any clean buckets. And he couldn't find any kerosene buckets either. So he said, oh, what do I do? So after a long time, he found a bucket where people were selling soy sauce. So he bought the bucket back, which was originally with soy sauce. And so this monk was waiting for him. He was just waiting for all this time. He's getting more and more angry because he thought, gosh, this bucket's not coming back. Then when he finally got back, he saw that the bucket was actually a soy sauce bucket, which was not what he wanted. So he got even more angry. So he started, getting really upset and getting angry and hitting the person, and then the person also took the bucket, started hitting him, and it was a big oh, you could say a big fight, I guess. And but somehow in this process, halfway through, he said, you know what, you don't have to hit me anymore. He says, why? He says, well, I'm not angry, and at this point on, I won't get angry anymore. And so this story was told by Venerable Master Hui Seng, who Venerable Master Hua invited to speak the Bodhisattva precepts. And he says that, because in this time, the monk got such a beating that he had this kind of quote-unquote angry ghost. He had this kind of a spirit that would get into him, which was an angry ghost. And this time, the beating was so severe, the ghost left, the spirit left. So at that point on, he didn't get angry anymore. So the principle is not so much that, is more if we really want to get rid of our anger or change our habits, we really have to make a strong resolve. And so if we can really make a strong resolve, then bit by bit we can change our habits.
在这个华严经实地品，其实这个经文道理呢都很深的，那么已经是大菩萨的境界了。对我们凡夫来讲，虽然道理深，但是呢，我们也可以把这个道理啊，在日常生活中，就是实际的运用啊，就是看看呢，我们有什么不好的习气毛病，然后我们哪些呢善的事情呢，我们做得不够好，我们修行呢还要怎么努力？从这一方面呢，就是一点一滴的做，就是虽然呢不能到大菩萨的境界，但是呢比较能够符合我们的实际的生活，也可以从这个华严经的经文呢，让我们的修行能够更进步。因此呢，这个一般我讲的都是比较生活上的，就是让大家能够实际去修行，那这样的话对大家比较有帮助。我想呢，今天呢时间到了，这个。最后我问大家有没有什么问题？如果没有，那我们今天就到这里为止。
So the Avatamsaka Sutra's principles are actually very deep and profound, and it's the Bodhisattva's realizations and his states. And so for many of us, it's, you could say, beyond our experience. And so, however, what we can do is take it as inspiration and see what principles we can use in our daily life. We can use them to change our bad habits, to cultivate good, to really practice the way, and see what the principles here are in the Avatamsaka, that step by step we can move in that direction. And so tonight I try to speak about the Dharma in a very living way, a way that connects with people's life and what's going on, so that we can all cultivate this path. Now the time is actually up. I don't know if there's any just general questions. If not, we'll end the lecture. I guess if no questions, we can.
This is just a really little question. When you said that in the story about the carpenter, and then you said it was the seventh day, like when he hit his head. I didn't understand the Chinese, and then I didn't understand the translation, like what that meant.
The axe came down from the roof beam and hit him on the head and killed him. The Buddha saw that he only had 7 days left to live. And so the Buddha went to his house hoping to give him opportunity to plant blessings. So we only had 7 days left to live. And the man was saying, I have so many things I want to do. I want to raise my kid, I want him to get married, and so on the seventh day, basically his life ended. So that was the idea of the story.
Hi. I have a question too. So you said earlier that Buddhas only cross over people he has affinities with, but how about when you want to cross over people you don't have affinities with? Is it still possible to cross over more people than your affinities limit to?
他的问题是说，你有说那个佛陀是度他有缘的众生，但是如果我们不只是想度我们有缘的众生，有没有能力可以度我们没有缘的众生？也可以这样子吗？
可以的。其实我刚刚讲那个佛呢，住在印度，他在印度并没有把全部的印度人都度完了，在印度那时候还有很多外道。那经过了1000年以后，这个佛法才传到中国来，中国人才接触佛法，然后又传到日本、韩国。所以并不是当时佛住世就开始来度印度人啊、中国人、亚洲人、欧洲人。这个佛呢，他发了心，不是说只度有缘，其实是佛是看因缘的。那个因缘呢，他就是度这些人，然后这些人度完了，事实上佛没有放弃，佛把那个佛法留在世间，留在世间度未来有缘的。 但是未来有缘呢，你在佛世的时候是跟佛没有缘的，可是没有缘以后呢，因为有某些因缘转变，那到未来世这些众生就跟佛有缘了。那这个其实在《法华经》有讲到一个故事，就讲到一个很好的医生。这个很好的医生呢，他有一次这个医生外出了，那他有很多儿子，这个儿子呢就吃了东西中毒了，每个孩子都中毒。那么这个父亲回来的时候呢，那个每个孩子就去求他的父亲说：“我们现在都中毒了，那你要救救我们呢？”那这个医生呢，他知道了，就开了很多处方，那给他的这个孩子吃。这个孩子呢，中毒不深的，他们就相信了，很快就吃了药，病就好了。可是呢，那个中毒很深的，那个就是说，那个毒性已经到他的心里面了，那个伤到他的心了。那这个他的父亲呢，开了处方啊，煎了药，要给他的孩子服用，说你们吃了这个药，你的病就好了。可是这个中毒很深的孩子不愿意吃，他不相信，也不愿意吃，所以呢，这个医生呢没有办法了，他就设了一个方便。什么方便呢？他就离开他的家，到别的国家去了。然后呢，就派人就送了一个消息回来给他孩子说呢，你们的父亲已经死了，那以后呢，你们要自己照顾自己了。这个孩子一听说他父亲死了，那以后呢，他们如果有病啊有困难，没有人可以帮助他们，就靠自己了。这个时候他的小孩才想起来说，原来呢他父亲以前给他们开过那些药的，那时候他们不吃，那现在呢想起来了，就把那个药给吃了，吃了呢那个病都好了。所以他这是一个譬喻，这个譬喻就代表什么？说佛呢当时在印度，他呢跟就是度众生的时候，就是那根基成熟了，那些众生根基成熟，他们把他度了，变成像阿罗汉啊，像这种辟支佛了，或是变成菩萨了，或是在法华会上要所有的人都说你们要回小向大了，你不只做阿罗汉，而且呢你们将来都要成佛的。这个佛呢就是他把该度的这有缘的都度了，但是没有缘的呢，或是当时度不了的，以后呢佛会再出现在世界上继续度他们，或是这众生呢跑到别的世界，在《法华经》也讲，佛呢也会到别的世界去度他们，或是我刚刚讲的，比如说佛呢把他其实刚刚讲的医生就代表佛了。这个医生呢，他当时呢开了处方，可是有些人呢就是不肯吃，或是呢这个他还不知道，就是说他并不知道有这样的一个药，那就代表说，当佛呢在讲法的时候，有些众生相信了，所以他得到这个法的利益了；有些众生当时不相信，怀疑了。法华会上有佛在讲《法华经》5000个人退席了，不听。他说：“那个佛以前你教我们的时候已经是最高的法了，为什么现在你还要讲别的法呢？”所以我们不相信，这5000人就退席离开了。那佛呢也不制止他们。那个就是当时呢，像这个医生开了药，他不肯吃的。可是这些人，佛有没有放弃他们？不会的，这5000退席等到在来生未来世这个因缘成熟的时候，佛呢还是会度化他们。所以呢，佛不只是度有缘的众生没有缘的众生，其实佛也度。但是呢，佛不是用嘴巴讲说他跟我有缘没有缘，佛知道，因为佛是观基多教嘛，他知道跟他有缘，那这个他根基成熟了，他需要讲法华经就讲法华经，他跟菩萨就讲这个华严经，他讲对那些就是适合修净土法门的，就讲这个阿弥陀经或是无量寿经，就是看众生什么根基讲什么法。可是佛在讲法的时候，他不会跟你讲说，你就适合念佛，我就跟你讲念佛；你适合修这个法华经，我就跟你讲法华经。佛是先呢，就是知道根基成熟了，然后就对这些人来讲法，因为那个佛他有大神通嘛。那么可是佛没有讲说我要度的众生是不是你们跟我无缘呢？这个佛已经不分别了。今天我们讲了很多，就是其实这有跟无呢都是空了。佛不会有这个执着的，他有缘的也要度，没有缘的也要度。那么事实上，佛有他的方便，佛就把这个佛法呢遗留在世间。现在为什么佛入灭3000多年了，我们现在还可以碰到佛法，还可以修行的？你根据现在佛所遗留的经典来修行，一样可以开悟的，一样可以脱离六道轮回。那为什么呢？因为佛知道我们就是可以用这个方法得到这种 就是解脱的。所以呢，虽然我们不生在3000多年前呢佛世的时候，可是3000年多佛知道我们还是会碰到佛法，所以他呢已经帮我们准备好了。那至于没有缘的众生，其实还有一个讲法，就是如果跟释迦牟尼佛没有缘，那不见得这个人跟阿弥陀佛没有缘。如果这个人跟阿弥陀佛也没有缘，那不见得跟这个药师佛没有缘，因为每尊佛呢都有他特别的缘分。就像举一个最简单的例子，上人度很多人，但是上人也没有把这个世界上的众生都度完，也没有说现在世界上的众生都听到万佛圣尘，或是呢也知道这个世界上有一个这个宣化上人来度化众生，很多人从来没有听过，就像佛住世的时候一样。但是在上人发的愿里头，有没有要度他们？有。上人呢，你看有缘无缘见了面听到声音，或是呢连最没有缘的众生，善恶道的众生，上人呢都要度他们成佛以后呢，上人才会成佛的。所以呢这个有时候在文字语言表达的时候不会讲得很清楚，但并不是说做了分别不过呢，这个听法的时候呢你这样提醒我，我下次呢就会特别小心的。
So the answer is yes. When the Buddha actually, he also rescues and helps those who doesn't have an affinity with. So the Buddha, you could say, taught in India, and he taught those who were living in India at the time, as well as various externalists who came to study with him. He tried to help them. And for some people that didn't have faith in him, he wasn't able to help them. They didn't have the affinities. But still the Dharma was taught and was stayed in the world for thousands and thousands of years. So it went to China, then it goes to Japan, to Korea, to all these various countries. And so others could learn the Dharma and cultivate the way. So the Buddha's intention, the Buddha's vow is to save all living beings. But when he teaches to the causes and conditions. When the living beings are ready for those teachings, he teaches them that Dharma. But however, he doesn't, you could say, care about the others. Doesn't, you could say, try to also benefit and rescue the others. In fact, he really has the vows to help all living beings. And so one analogy can be given is the story in the Lotus Sutra, where the Buddha is likened to a really good doctor. And he goes out and to another country, and his children actually end up taking poison. So they all get sick. And so when he gets back home, he sees all his children sick, and the kids say, "Oh, please save us, help us, we're all sick." So this good doctor says, "Okay, here, take this medicine." So all the children have very different levels of sickness. Some are just sick a little bit, and so they take the medicine, they get better. Some others, the sickness has gotten very, very extreme, that's affected their mind. And so they don't trust the medicine, and they aren't willing to take the medicine. So they're suffering. And the father then thinks of a skillful method. So what does he do? He goes off to another country, and in this other country, he sends back word that he has died. Basically, so somebody said that they tell them that his children that he has died, and that they had to take care of themselves now. And so these kids, hearing, "Oh, my father is gone, I can't rely on my father anymore," they kind of wake up, say, "Oh, what did my father leave me?" They said, "Oh, my father told me to take this medicine." So then they take the medicine and they get better. So similarly, the Buddha teaches us in these ways to help us wake up out of our confusion. And so even in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha when he taught it, 500 people left the assembly because they weren't ready. 5,000 left the assembly because they thought that what the Buddha taught them before was the highest Dharma and didn't want to accept more. And so the Buddha didn't obstruct their leaving. He just let them leave the assembly and not receive the teachings because they weren't ready for it yet. But did he mean that he doesn't want them to at one point make the resolve for Buddhahood and cultivate the way? No, he still has that intention, but he just doesn't force it. He goes with the causes and conditions. He watches it when it arises at the right time. So for some beings that they're ready for the Dharma Flower Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, he teaches that Lotus Sutra. For the Bodhisattvas, he teaches the Avatamsaka. For those who are ready for the Pure Land teachings, then he teaches the Pure Land teachings. For others with the other teachings, he teaches the other teachings. So he watches and sees when the conditions ripen, he gives the right teachings. He doesn't make this kind of distinction in his mind. These living beings have an affinity with me, these living beings don't have an affinity with me, and therefore he doesn't teach them. In fact, for him, the Buddha, we already know the Buddhas, they don't discriminate in that way. He just teaches the causes and conditions skillfully. So that now you can say 3,000 years later, we still have these teachings that we can follow, that we can use and cultivate and end the cycle of birth and death and wake up and realize liberation. So another way, if we want to explain this, is also looking at Shakyamuni Buddha. Is if we don't have an affinity, or living beings have an affinity with Shakyamuni Buddha, it's not for sure they might not have an affinity with Amitabha Buddha. And it's not for sure if they don't have an affinity with either of those Buddhas, maybe they might have an affinity with Medicine Master Buddha. All these Buddhas have different beings have affinities with them. Another example is the Venerable Master. The Venerable Master, you could say many people had a lot of affinity with him, and he taught the Dharma and helped a lot of people. But many people have never heard of the Venerable Master. They don't even know this person existed. They never heard of the 16,000 Buddhas. However, if we read the Venerable Master's vows, the Venerable Master's vows are very expansive. He was willing to rescue all beings, to not just those he has an affinity with. Anybody who even just hears his name, sees his face, he wants to rescue and help. Even those in the 3 destinies of pain and suffering, the 3 evil destinies, he also wants to help. So from their vantage point, his vantage point, he wants to rescue all living beings, not just those he has an affinity with. So if you ask, just good thing you brought this up, because I will be more careful when my speaking the Dharma in the future, just to be clear about this point. Okay. So we'll do the transference of merit. It's on the back of your requesting Dharma sheet. Okay, so everybody can make a wish to transfer the merit to anybody you would like to transfer to, or through all living beings. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise.